Thanks for tuning in back to the Football Talk Squadron. And this is our Super Bowl preview episode before the Chiefs and the 49ers kick it off. I'm Dutch.
And I'm Pops.
And I'm looking forward to bringing you the episode today. We're going to get into it, talk a lot about just this one particular game. It's great because it's sort of the first time in the NFL that we've just had one game to like dedicate ourselves to. So I'm pretty excited about the episode. And I know Pops is as well. But before we get into that, do our guess the player, as we have been all season. I am going to add a little bit of a twist on it, and it will be Pop's major first hint, which all of these are going to be past players, but they're all Super Bowl MVPs. So I will keep it, recent for Pops, like within his lifetime. I'm not going to go back to Lynn Dawson and really test the bounds of Super Bowl knowledge, but I thought it would be a good time to highlight some of these guys, Super Bowl MVPs. It's tough to pass up on those guys. So I will give you the option, instead of calling it past or present, I'll either give you the option of you can get the name of the guy to guess his college, or you can try to guess the player. So you want to do guess the college or guess the player?
First. I'll do guess the college first.
Guess the college. I think this is an easy one, but I'm also sort of stuck on it because I know where he went to school, so it may be a little bit easier for me if you don't know. Hines Ward, receiver from Pittsburgh, only Pittsburgh, still looking to get in the Hall of Fame, but was a Super Bowl MVP against the Seahawks that year.
Yeah, he went to Georgia, didn't he?
He did go to Georgia. Great pick. I talk about it in an upcoming episode. Me and my dad went to the Hall of Fame. They had his picture up, which really made me upset. Not because I don't think Hines Ward is a Hall of Famer. I actually do think he's a Hall of Famer, but he's not in the Hall of Fame. So I just found it like messed up that here at this place where you're celebrating Hall of Famers, his picture was hung up, and I was a little upset about that. So, which I would be if I was Hines Ward. But he was a tremendous receiver. I think that the big thing, I'm not sure for you, Pops, I've yet to see a guy that blocked as well as he did in the pros. And I think that's like undervalued, that dude, it didn't matter what his job was. Like he was given 100% at whatever you told him to do during the game.
Yeah. And the surprising thing, Illinois had quite a bit of Steelers fans. They were just considered America's team outside of the Cowboys. And my uncle was actually, he still is a Steelers fan. And so I watched a lot of games growing up. And, Hines Ward was always Mr. Dependable. He didn't have to be the showtime, but he made the plays when it counted.
For sure. I think Mr. Reliable is probably one of the better ways to categorize Hines, especially during his time in the NFL. But now we'll go back to guess the player. So guess the player this time. The school that he graduated from was Louisville. School's Louisville. Played for the Patriots, the Seahawks, and the Colts.
All right, so I'm guessing playing for the Patriots. Did Deion play for the Colts? Deion Branch? Because I know he played for the Seahawks. I'm going to go Deion Branch.
It is Deion Branch. Great nice. Pull. Great pull. Man, 2-0. That's, I was tempted to give you Santonio Holmes for the other guess the player. But the issue is that outside of the Steelers, the other two teams didn't win a Super Bowl. And after giving you Hines Ward, I was like, well, there's only one other guy, and you would know him from the catch against the Cardinals. So
yeah, for sure.
Great pull. I think a lot of people forget how good Deion Branch was back in the day. Like those early days of Brady sort of get overlooked in those championship runs. I think it's because of how good their defense was. Teddy, Vrabel, Vrabel played both ways. He even called it. He called a Super Bowl catch against the Panthers. So
Well, how many
sort of
touchdowns does
remarkable that.
yeah, how many touchdowns does Vrabel have? He's got double digit touchdowns, doesn't he, on offense? Because they used to do that
Let me
stuff all the
actually look at
time.
that.
He was
I
known
that
for lining up and sneaking behind the defense.
he was just one of those guys that they used very well when it
Mhm.
came time to be able to put him in. But let me take a look because I want to see. The issue is I'm pulling up stats
Yeah,
for
for the
him.
defense as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pulling up offensive. But let me take a look at his stats from scoring. Yeah, he had 11 TDs total,
Mhm.
10 receptions. So, you know, pretty much every time Mike Vrabel caught the ball, it was going for six.
Yep.
Yeah, what a great look back into the past. But that's a good transition for me because taking a look in the past, the way I was going to talk about this episode is previewing the Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the 49ers was I went back and I watched a few games. So I went back and watched the first time the Niners played the Chiefs. Then I watched how the Chiefs got beat by the Bucks. And really, I mean, that game, the Buccaneers came out and really handled it from the get go. The Chiefs failed to get an offense. I'll talk a little bit about why that was. And then I watched the second half of the Chiefs Ravens game, mainly because the Chiefs were held without scoring a point. It was really their defense stepped up. For me, and I'll give this over to you, Pops, once I sort of talk about it and get your thoughts. The biggest thing that I noticed first from the original Chiefs 49ers game, the offense is completely retooled for San Francisco. You know, they had Raheem Mostert. I think it's a clear upgrade, especially when you're talking about a guy that's playing at MVP level in Christian McCaffrey. You know, you sit back and they had Kendrick Bourne at wide receiver. You know, now they have Brandon Ayuk. They also have Jawan Jennings. They still keep Greg Kittle, but you know, he's a rookie this year. You know, and now you've gotten years of experience behind him. Jimmy G and Brock Purdy, I would argue, is really comparable, like in just who they are. I think both are good game managers and they're able to make the throws that you want them to make. However, at no point am I like, hey, they're the Patrick Mahomes. Like they just can make some unbelievable throws all the time. I'm not putting them into that category. The defense is pretty much the same. You know, they're a little bit older. They still had Greenlaw and Wagner, and they still had Boza. They have an addition of, you know, Chase Young on the outside now. But from the Chiefs' perspective in that game, I think that they're really the same team. The biggest difference is instead of having a rookie in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they have a rookie in Isaiah Pacheco. And this is sort of the bigger piece, they lost Tyreek Hill, which I think we're really starting to see sort of the evidence of that this year in sort of the offense just not being there. It helps that Kadarius Toney and other guys in VS can't catch. Um, I don't know if you saw it on the Instagram or not. I posted something yesterday for Bad News Mondays that I thought was interesting. The most drops and the least drops in the season were by who this past season in 2023 for the regular season?
Yeah, so Kansas City had the most with, like, I think 44, 45, and then
44, yeah.
yeah, and then, the 49ers only dropped 9, I think.
Yeah, they're the least. And now the good thing for the Chiefs is they haven't had the drops this postseason. They've played really well in the postseason, which has been the reason they've been winning these games. My question to you is based upon the retooling of the offense, do you think that it, it helps? How do you see that helping San Francisco in this game against the Chiefs? What's the biggest differences and just sort of the names that I named? Where do you look at and go, hey, that could be a big deciding factor in changing the outcome of the game?
Yeah, so, the way that I kinda look at, um, they also had Emmanuel Sanders, I believe,
Yeah.
on that 19 team. So he was their speed guy, which I think Ayuk has that ability, to get into open space, and hopefully I would assume that Brock Purdy would be able to make that throw that Jimmy G can't, in those big moments. What I'm talking about is I think it was the second quarter, might have been third quarter.
It was it,
Uh,
it was the fourth quarter that he
really,
overshoots Sanders. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he had the wide open touchdown to Sanders and just completely overshot him. I think Purdy makes that throw. I give Brock Purdy uh, a notch in his hat for having better accuracy than Jimmy G does. Um, so I think that is an upgrade. Obviously, CMC over Raheem Mostert is definitely an upgrade in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, Mostert's a great running back, but I think as far as that goes, they have better weapons going up against Kansas City this time around.
For sure. For me, and I'm sure you're going to probably say the same. When I watched that game, they were able it and it's sort of been true against Kansas City, I would say for most of the year outside of the playoffs, and no teams really challenged them on it, which is running the football. And that was what
Hmm.
Shanahan was criticized for. Now, I went back and I watched that game. I Were they gashing the Chiefs 100%. However, especially in the fourth quarter, they gained 5 yards, and like you could even tell that I was like, I'd probably throw it here. Like they're so scared of the run. I think it's a good time to throw, and they throw, and it would be incomplete. But now you're in this position where it's still like 3rd and 5, and you're not wanting to run the ball because you're trying to pick up that first down. It just I know Shanahan's caught a lot of heat from it, but it wasn't as like clear and obvious in the moment, that he should have kept running the football. I sit back with Christian McCaffrey, like if you're going to sit back and go, hey, he's the MVP of the league, I think that you got to put him in the ball in his hands, to which I think that that's probably the Chiefs' number one concern is trying to shut him down. Um, how do you think that McCaffrey holds the key to the game for the Niners in terms of their offense, or is it more based upon Brock Purdy's shoulders?
Yeah, I think for me, we've seen Brock Purdy get off to slow starts early on in these games against the Packers and then against the Lions. So for me personally, you got to run the ball. You got to have CMC opening up everything else because he, in my opinion, is your offense, and you get your options for follow on plays based on how he's running. In this particular game, I see the Chiefs with their pass defense. I don't see how you could come out of the gates, trying to get the game pass game going with Ayuk and Debo. I think right away you got to start running the ball and see what you're getting. And then it's going to be up to Spagnolia whether or not he's got an answer for CMC, which I'm sure he does. But with the MVP type talent that McCaffrey is, I'm sure that he's going to find ways to get those big chunk plays, and really all the load and the pressure, in my opinion, should be on CMC for this 49ers offense to be successful against the Chiefs defense.
Yeah, how Spagnolia's attacked it through the early part of this, playoffs is he's just been a blitzing guy, like
Mhm.
really try to get the ball out of their hands quick. We'll take our chances on you scrambling, which, we talked about last time we were on. Purdy did exactly what Lamar Jackson couldn't, which was scramble and pick up those big yards, which he looked, I mean, it was pretty ironic that in the biggest moments of the game, for as much criticism that Purdy's taken, he was the guy that was able to pick up those big chunks in that game that really propelled them against Detroit, which was super surprising. And I don't know if from the sense of I didn't expect Purdy to do it. It was more just I didn't see him hitting those type of plays that I would expect. So with Purdy's ability to scramble, how do you see that coming into this game? Do you think that's going to be a factor that the Chiefs sort of plan on, or do you think that he just sort of surprises us, sort of like he did against the Lions?
Yeah, I think, based on the way that you got to play that, I feel they're going to uh, give him that option. I don't see how you could change up your game plan and, put a spy on him or anything like that, because he's going to primarily throw the ball. However, it could be a game changer coming up in this game. He picked up that big run against Detroit, for about 20 yards. They just gave him a seam and he took it when they needed it most. So he has the ability, but I don't see, you spending Willie Gay and putting him over the top to spy on him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs defense attacks, which for me to now switch, I know we've been talking about the offense. I've been saving it. I talked about at the beginning of the episode before we get into the defense. I want to go back to Tampa Bay and the Niners. You know, that game, yes, it was Brady and Gronk. They took a lead early. What I saw in that game was not the sense that the Bucks shut down Mahomes. You know, Mahomes made some incredible throws that were either dropped, bounced off the guy's chest. You know, it was just he did he had about 3 throws, 2 that were just incredible. He does like a spin move, throws it, hits Pringle in the corner that's you know, it would have been a tough catch but was dropped. He has that one that's pretty iconic of him like parallel to the ground that he's throwing that was dropped. And then
Hmm.
earlier in the second half, he 3rd and 10 hits Kelsey for like a 35-yard out and really uncharacteristic of Kelsey that he drops. So they have that, but the bigger thing that I noticed in that game was that the Bucks, you know, that they gave up yards to the Chiefs, but down on their side of the field, anytime the Chiefs got into about 3rd or 5 and 3rd and 7, they were able to get pressure up the middle, which I can tell you as a quarterback, you hate because you can't step into a throw and it would force Mahomes to run. You know, and it wasn't just like a run for like he's been doing where he gets out of containment and breaks loose. It was like the edge guy was there too. He just sort of had a run, you know, sort of at a backwards pace to get away towards his sideline or towards the opposing sideline, but running away from the line of scrimmage and just try to heave some up. And it really made the difference in the game. And that's something that I haven't seen this postseason against the Chiefs is no one's been able to get pressure on Mahomes. And I hate to say it, but when you have the best quarterback in the league, if you can't get pressure on him, he's going to tear you up. And that's what we've been seeing this whole postseason. My thing is that now with Bosa and the addition of Young, it's like the 49ers knew that they could be put into this situation. Do you see San Francisco's defense, which to me is the biggest question mark of this game, being able to get pressure on Mahomes and change the outcome of the game defensively? How do you see that going just based upon what we've seen so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, based on what we've seen, we've been able, between the Packers and the Lions, they've been able to run right at Chase Young. I mean, they've even on ESPN been pointing out, fundamental plays where Chase Young is breaking down, uh, and just following his instinct versus following fundamentals, losing contain, being able to have the back jump, to get the edge. And so there's been plays like that, where Chase Young is just not who I'm not going to say it's not who we thought he was, but he's not playing to the level of which he got drafted for. And I think the 49ers thought that they were going to get that version of Chase Young, and he just hasn't shown it, for the last, I mean, shoot. You can honestly say since he's come off his injuries, he just has not looked the same version of himself that he was at Ohio State. And I do like what the 49ers were trying to do between him and Bosa. You think, those two, bulldogs out there, they're going to eat, and they're just not showing up in the moments that they're needed. And, that's going to allow for Pacheco, to do his thing and stomp on the earth like he's mad at it, and just tear them up, in my personal opinion. And guess what? That's going to expose the secondary of the 49ers. So to me, I think the biggest thing is the Chiefs receivers have to catch the ball. And it's not even a question of, how this game's going to go, because the 49ers secondary, is, they're vulnerable. And especially if you're not able to get home to Mahomes on those third and short, third and mid situations, I mean, you're going to have yourself a day for that defense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I sit back and I look at that exact idea, and I think that is how Kansas City comes out and tries to attack San Francisco is they're going to run the ball right at Chase Young and make them prove that they can stop the run. If the Chiefs are gashing the 49ers, early and often in this game, gaining at least 5 yards a rush. I'm gonna tell you, I think that this is not a close game. Like, and it's
Exactly.
not from the sense that I'm not worried about San Francisco's offense, which is sort of crazy. I think that that's the narrative of this game is that everyone's coming in talking about Purdy and how Purdy has to be the factor. I don't see that really at all. I think that he has the talent on that offense that the Niners offense should be able to hold their own. It's their defense that's the biggest question mark. And one of the biggest like things that I noticed between that first game that they played and this game, especially this postseason, Kelsey really wasn't. Yes, he called a touchdown pass in the first game. He wasn't this like overwhelming presence. Like, and it was because they had Tyreek Hill, they had other guys out there that really, they were lining up 4 or 5 wide receiver sets, doing that for both, you know, the Super Bowl against the 49ers and the Bucks. This season, it's like they've been running 2 and 3 tight end sets in order to establish the running game and throw. For me, if I'm San Francisco, I just sit back and I go, those 2 linebackers and Greenlaw and Wagner, if I'm in a meeting room with them, I'm sort of telling them like, this is your game to win or lose because I think that Chase Young has been inadequate, as you pointed out, really since the injuries, which is why the Commanders traded him. He wasn't making the difference that he needed, so they got what they could in terms of a draft pick out of him. I just sit back and on this biggest stage, I go, you've got to shut down Pacheco. Like if you don't
Mhm.
shut down him, game's over. Outside of Mahomes and Pacheco and Kelsey, do you look to MVS or is it Rashid Rice that you think has the bigger game? I know that's sort of crazy. And I guess the other big point is do you think Tony ever gets into the game?
Yeah, I sent that picture to you guys this morning, and Maul corrected it, saying, if I catch the ball, I'm wide receiver one. Yeah, that's I I tell you what, MVS has always been the big play guy. Like you go back to when he was in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, they had Devontae, so he wasn't going to ever be number one there, but he was the big play, deep threat guy. Where I see Rasheed Rice, I mean, he's the underneath guy. He always finds a way to get open, in my opinion. He had a really good game against the Bills, helping out, and then he's also a supplement to Travis Kelsey. So outside of them, I would pick Rice to have the bigger game, but I would not be surprised if MVS gets a big play and he's actually able to catch it. I mean, he's been catching like crazy since the playoffs started, and I'm impressed by the way he's playing moving into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Mahomes has the ability, and I think it's one of those ones where when you look at Rashid and you look at MVS and you look at the other guys that they have on that offensive side, outside of Kelsey, it's really not about them. It's the fact that Mahomes can just fit it in a window that other quarterbacks have not been able to. I mean, he shut him down against the Ravens with that throw that you mentioned to MVS, which I look at the playoffs outside of Jared Goff, there was not really a guy that was just darting them. The one other guy that was really darting them was Jordan Love. Um, up until that pick that he had at the end of the game. I go back to sort of what you were talking about with how the Lions and the Packers both attacked the 49ers and the fact that when the Lions came out and did it, you really saw no change in that Niners defense of how the Lions were rushing right at him, sort of knowing that like, hey, Aaron Jones did this. I got a feeling the Lions are going to do it too. I sit back, and that's why I just sort of sit back and go, I think the game can get away from the Chiefs because I think that's how the Chiefs are going to come out and attack them right off the get go. With that, how do you sort of see San Francisco combating that either on the offensive side or defensive side of the football to try to slow down Kansas City?
Yeah, man. Where I see this going as far as the answer that the 49ers defense has, I think it's kind of already what you talked about with Warner and Greenlaw having to hold the defense on their shoulders. We've seen their secondary get torched. We've seen their defensive line not be able to get home and really make an impact on a game. So that really leaves right there with the linebackers of what they're going to be able to do. Now, as far as how do we call that defense, I think it's going to have to be a balanced approach because guess what? You start blitzing, we're going to be able to roll off some play actions and stuff like that, off the backfield or out of the backfield, excuse me, and have, Mahomes on the roll, which that's not what you want. I don't think Warner or Greenlaw have the ability to play spy over the top of Mahomes all game long. And guess what? One of those guys is going to have to guard Kelsey. And we already know what kind of nightmare it is when you got a guy out there who's as unpredictable as Kelsey because he admitted himself. He's like, sometimes I get to make up my own routes and he still finds a way to get open. So, man, those linebackers are going to have their work cut out for them. I think that's their only way, unless Chase and Bosa have a way to make an impact on this game. Because even in the run game, when Pacheco gets out of the game, we've still got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which if you look back on his 2019 season, this guy was one of the top running backs in the league. I mean, he can come out of the backfield. He can also be a little bit of a pound for pound. I know he's a little bit smaller, but he still runs like he's, you know, not as hard as Pacheco, but he can still run the ball very effectively in certain down to go situations. And I think their offense, as long as the receivers can catch the ball, is going to not allow the 49ers to get home and really try to blitz Pat all that much.
Yeah, I think for me, as we get sort of into this preview of how we think the game's actually going to go, there are key things on both sides of the football. One of the biggest is that San Francisco has started incredibly slow both playoff games. They've shown this year that they can be dominant in situations, and they've also had tremendous lows. Um, the thing with Kansas City this season, especially this postseason, in the season and compared to this postseason, they're two completely different teams. I sit back, you look at how poorly they played, the fact that they've won the games really as convincing as they have. And I understand that Baltimore doesn't look great. You know, Buffalo had a chance to tie, if not win, if Diggs catches that ball. Um, you look at Kansas City's offense, they could not be stopped against Buffalo except for Hardman fumbling into the end zone and then that third down, stop by the Bills. But then you look against the Ravens and you go, well, they couldn't score the whole second half. And my question, I guess, goes to sort of you, and this is sort of the thing for the game is I think that 49ers defense is better than Buffalo's. However, I don't think it's at the level of the Ravens. Like, maybe I'm wrong by that. Maybe, like, I can't get past the fact that Boza has really never lived up to what he's been billed as this like dominant pass rusher. He doesn't affect games like I mean, you look at Detroit, I believe he had a sack against Detroit, but against Green Bay, really not a factor. I just sort of sit back and go against this Kansas City offense, an offense that I do think is very capable of struggling. I think he has to get home. I don't have a lot of faith. Where do you put them in sort of that ranks of how Kansas City's defenses they play? Do you put them below the Ravens, or how do you sort of bill the the Niners defense?
Yeah, I mean honestly, I don't see them as elite. I mean, you look just even if you want to go back to the end of the or in the middle of the season, when the 49ers got spanked at home by the Ravens, uh, Lamar was able to put on a show and they weren't able to contain him. And I know Patrick's not the same type of runner that Lamar is, but the 49ers had fits with Lamar to the tune of getting blown out. And that's, I think, is what we're on the verge of seeing here tonight, or not tonight, on Sunday, excuse me. We're going to see the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, when this is like the issue I have, and I think it's like it's betrayed me twice now, where I really thought that Kansas City was going to get beat. I picked Buffalo and I picked Baltimore. I really thought that, hey, both throughout this year, Kansas City has shown problems. The thing I
Mhm.
really wasn't counting on is the fact that their defense has found the ability to rise to the occasion. And yet again, it's Chris Jones that he's really the guy on defense. Like, don't get me wrong, like Drew Tranquil, Gay, and Bolden have made impactful plays, and Snead's played really well. Like, they've had guys that have really played well. I really think the offensive line, if they can get Chris Jones blocked, that's a huge win. Like, that for me is San Francisco's game plan is you just can't let this one guy win. Like, if we can one-on-one match up with this guy and run the ball away from him and get to the second level with Christian McCaffrey, I think that they do. Like, I really think that San Francisco should hold their own offensively. My question is what defense are we going to see? And the fact of the matter is when you're playing right now the best quarterback in the NFL and Patrick Mahomes, I have to give the edge to the Chiefs. Like, and it's not
Mhm.
that I'm pulling against the Chiefs. It's not that I'm pulling for the 49ers. It's more of just this simple fact of the matter is Mahomes has been near perfect the whole playoffs. He's thrown some amazing passes. Guys have been clutch for him. I still think that he has. You could. I think it's not even an argument that he is. It's him and Gronk vying for the best tight end in NFL history. So anytime that you're able to say that, I think it was either with you or Maul. I sort of talked about. I don't know how Kelsey always somehow gets wide open, and
Mhm.
the answer is, well, that's why he's viewed as the greatest tight end of all time. Like, that's what that guy does. That's why he's so good. Is he's able. He just like you talked about. He runs his own route sometimes. Like him and Mahomes have a connection. They're able to do things a certain way, and I think that's very problematic for a defense like San Francisco. My question for San Francisco is I think that they sell out to stop the run. They sell out to stop Kelsey, which is, I would argue, an impossible thing. I think he's still probably going to get, half a dozen catches on the night, or at least opportunities to catch the football. It's the other guys. What you talked about with MVS. Like, can you not give up the big play to MVS? Can you not give up the down the middle wide open strike to Rashid Rice? Can you keep those things in check? Because if you can't, you're going to lose this game. The other big thing for me in San Francisco is I think this is an undervalued stat, which is 7 straight games, including the Baltimore game, Kansas City has scored the very first time they possess the football,
Mm.
and other
Mhm.
teams aren't able to do that. And for me, I think that if they are able to at least hold, to break that trend, and then for the Niners to be able to get on the board first, they have to control the tempo of the game. I think if the tempo of the game gets away from them early, San Francisco's done. Um, but that for me is how San Francisco wins. They have to control the narrative. I don't care if it's tied. If they drive down and score, then Kansas City responds. As long as they're controlling the tempo of the game and they're at least matching San Francisco, I give San Francisco a fighting chance. What do you think San Francisco has to do in order to win this game?
Yeah, I think it's getting the stops on the defense. When you were just talking about that stat of the Kansas City Chiefs scoring first, you just think from a momentum standpoint too, like how this game is all based on momentum and emotions throughout the whole entire game. I mean, just as any game, but the Super Bowl takes it up a whole nother level. And just playing the head games with all the stuff that they've had to do this week with media and everything chasing them around. Whoever comes out swinging, they're going to have that early jump. And the other part, too, with bringing the 49ers to getting stops on defense, look at the Baltimore Ravens game and look at the possessions that the Chiefs were having. I mean, they were having 9-minute possessions, early on in that game. And you just can't let a team do that because all they're going to do is beat up your defense. And that's why the Baltimore defense, I know they made adjustments at halftime, but they weren't looking the same early in the game, and they were just getting, beat off the line and just beat up for, that whole first 30-minute half. I think the Chiefs had the ball for close to 20 minutes of that first half. So, uh, that's going to be the defense's answer is get to Mahomes and get that ball back in Brock Purdy's hands.
Yes. I mean, in that is where I think the narrative is built of Purdy is going to have to make some throws. Like he just will. And I think that's why they've started slow is I've watched some of the throws he's made early in those games and I mean, he's missed some like flat out. Like and it's a Super Bowl. Like my dad has said this time and time and time again, and it's one of the truest things I've ever. I think it's just like undervalued. I think we like me and you and Maul, we sit down and we hear it and we're like, yeah, no kidding. But you can't turn the football over against
Hmm.
the Chiefs. You
Yeah.
you can't do it. Lamar did it multiple times with a fumble, interception. You know, they fumbled it on the goal line with Zay Flowers. You look at those 3 times and you go, dude, all of those resulted in either the Ravens not scoring or giving the Kansas City points. You can't do that against the Chiefs. You can't allow them to stick in the games. And honestly, the Bills did it by just not being able to stop them. The Dolphins did it. The Dolphins look terrible. For the Niners, they just have to have the ability to have Purdy just get it. The thing that I do give the other thing advantage to the Niners, and I this is the only thing that really keeps me like going, I do think the Niners have a chance. The revenge factor. I think
Mm-hmm.
that there's enough guys on this team that were there, including Bosa, including Eric Armstrong, including George Kittle, including Debo, that these guys are like, dude, we've been here before. We've had this team on the ropes before. We should beat this team. And I think that there is a big factor with that of being, that guy, which is why I think Vegas has them as 2.5 point favorites. However, I still don't understand how Vegas has them as 2.5 point favorites. It's almost like Vegas knows something that we don't. And I don't understand that because based upon how both teams have played, I would give the nod to Kansas City with the points. I just I don't know how you can't view Kansas City as the favorite in this game. How do you why do you think Vegas favors the Niners in this game?
um, I mean, the only thing that I could think of is that Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift are about to break up this week. That's about the only way that I could see, such a momentum swing. Maybe it's the fact that, they expect more 49ers fans to be in the building. I mean, 2.5, I mean, it's almost putting it even already. Um, man, maybe they view the offense production better than the Chiefs, and maybe their defense about normal, even or about even though I think the Chiefs' defense is definitely a step ahead of the 49ers right now because that defense is the only thing that's kept them in ball games all this year when the offense was struggling. So, to be quite honest, um, yeah, maybe Shanahan's ready to put to bed, uh, his lack of success with Atlanta, allowing Brady to come back, the misfires by Jimmy G. He's got Brock Purdy now running the same scheme. Like it's hard to tell, but I don't see it either. Um, they must know that MVS is going to drop a wide open ball, um, similar to Jimmy G overthrowing Sanders.
Yeah, there's so many question marks. I feel yet again, I keep going back to this with the Chiefs that I have to stop doubting them because they have Mahomes and Kelsey, and that
Hmm.
is and Reed. Like I really like Andy Reid. I think that he has proven even before he started winning Super Bowls that he's been a great coach. You can't underestimate the fact that the Chiefs have played in 6 straight AFC championship games. I mean, that is remarkable. And this is 4 out of 5 Super Bowls that they've been to in the past 5 years. For me, now we're getting time for predictions. I sit back and I don't think it's close with the Niners. I don't get that vibe with the Chiefs. If the Niners win, I think it's super close. I think it's like a field goal game, sort of like it was with the Eagles, where it's just back and forth. Neither defense can really get on the same page. With the Chiefs, I think they run for most of the game and they just score early and often. I can sort of see them being up by like 17 points at half and maybe it gets down to a 10-point game, I still think the Chiefs win by 10. I think that they slow down the second half, but I see like a 24-13 game by the Chiefs. I don't think they blow them out of the water by like 40 points or anything. I think that the Niners defense is a little bit better than that, but I definitely can see the Chiefs getting into the mid 20s, if not into the 30s in this game. But I'm going to go 24-13 Chiefs. Where you sit?
Okay. Yeah. Another piece, that I kind of wanted to revisit. I was just thinking about with that 2.5 piece. Go back. We go back to last 2 weeks ago when they played the Ravens. You know, that defense was able to shut them down the whole second half, and had it not been for the three turnovers by Lamar, I mean, that could have been a different outcome. So maybe that's what Vegas is also hoping on is 49ers don't have the slow start that they've had the last couple of weeks, and that defense gets cooking. But I don't see it as far as my projections are going. I see it. I'm gonna go 27 to 21. I do give some credit to CMC. I think Purdy's going to be able to throw a touchdown and probably two rushes from CMC, in my opinion.
I mean, that would be an incredible if the Niners can keep it close for the game. I'd give the edge to the Niners just because of that revenge factor. I think that people have doubted the Niners. It's sort of that almost like Washington in the playoffs this year against Texas. I think a lot of and against Oregon. A lot of people doubted them, and I think that when you doubt it, and I get that feeling from the Niners. I think that a lot of people think Kansas City's going to win the game, even though the Niners are the favorite. I think that's the only reason that we haven't heard more about this like underdog talk from the Niners is just because they are favorites in the game. But I think a lot of them realize it. I agree with you though. If McCaffrey has under 100 yards rushing, Chiefs win by a mile.
Hmm.
If they can get McCaffrey going, which is sort of their bigger piece, and this is you know, against Detroit, they sort of held him back. Against the Packers, they sort of held him back. It was just sort of one of these ones like, hey, is McCaffrey hurt? Are you just not giving the ball to him? What are you doing? It would be a heavy dose of CMC and Debo to go with a side of George Kittle, you know,
That's right.
all game. Um, and like you pointed out, I think Brandon Ayuk is a very good threat. Jawan Jennings is huge. Like he has a very big frame to compete for those up top balls, 50-50 balls, however you want to call them. He is a threat down the field. That's for me on the other side of the field where I go with Kansas City. I'm like, Kansas City really doesn't have that guy. Like
Yeah.
MVS is a bigger guy, but they don't have like big physical wide receivers. They have Kelsey, they have a big physical tight end, and they have Gray, who's a big physical tight end. But now I will give them this: if San Francisco can make the Chiefs one dimensional, which is still a huge task, and make them throw, they just have to beg that Mahomes messes up like he did in that first Super Bowl because Mahomes didn't play well. He throws two
No, he
picks that
didn't.
were
Yeah.
one was a really bad interception, the other one was a tip by Tyreek drops it and gets batted up in the air. That's what they have to hope for. They have to hope for some turnovers to really have a chance. But it'll be interesting. It's so tough because I want to just sit back and tell you that I don't really see how San Francisco wins this game, but at the same time, I keep going back to it that there's something there that I think that the Niners can pull it off. It's just hard to see past the trees of Kansas City.
Yeah, and I think the thing for us, we've been wrong all playoffs long. So that's the best part about making these predictions. And I can't remember. I wanted to clarify. I said 27-21 Chiefs win, but I do think that the 49ers are able to, keep it within 10, in my personal opinion.
And we'll get to see. I think it'll be interesting. We'll definitely have a good post down breakdown of the Super Bowl post this episode. We'll let the Super Bowl get out of the way, and also, write your congressman. I say that because Monday needs to be an off day. The fact that anyone has to go to work after the Super Bowl is a crime against humanity. that's the biggest oversight in our solar system. if, if Congress is going to, I'm telling you right now, I don't care who was running for president. If they came on and they were like, my first goal in office would be to make Super Bowl Sunday and the day after a national holiday, I'd vote for
There it is.
him. Yeah, you'd win the election on that campaign.
I mean, since
But
they pushed it back, with it being on February 11th, February 12th in Illinois, it's a holiday for Lincoln's birthday. So, growing up, I did have that day off. Most of the time, I was celebrating the Daytona 500, but uh, this year now we get the Super Bowl.
yeah, well, you guys get lucky on that fact. The rest of America just has to shut up and go to work and try to make it through a day of which I stayed up till midnight. So, um, for us, we're going to have the episode next week breaking down the Super Bowl. We're also going to be, you're going to hear it during the episode, so you'll know me and Pops have been breaking down each of the NFL divisions. We've been talking about the ones that have already been eliminated. So there's a few that you're going to hear us talk. We don't know who wins the Super Bowl yet. We've been trying to get ahead. That way we can produce and push this content to you guys during the week. Um, we're through the NFC East and AFC East and also the NFC North. So we'll get on the AFC North here in a minute and get that locked down. But we're going to get each of those divisions lined up. And then what you can expect from us, we'll get a good draft episode. We'll get a post draft, sort of our expectations going into next year. Then we're going to get a lot of sort of unique episodes. We'll talk about a lot of different stuff, all football related though. So we're looking forward to it, especially as the season winds down. It's sad because it's the last weekend of football. I know the UFL is coming out. It's not that it's bad to watch. It's just how do I want to put this? It's sloppy. Like
Hmm.
it's it's a little bit sloppier than I'm even compared to in college. Like, and it sort of makes it hard to watch. And I think until the UFL cleans up sort of the sloppiness of play, it's just difficult to really get addicted to. But
Yeah, do you remember what we were in Gulfport? What was it? The AAF? What was that league that opened up in 2020 and then just immediately got wrecked by COVID? Um,
USFL, well, the XFL opened in COVID and they got wrecked. And then the USFL opened up. It's been doing the past 2 or 3 seasons they've been going. But then the XFL was struggling, and I think the USFL was struggling. So they've now combined to be the UFL, the United Football League. I mean, I will say it has produced some players for the NFL. It is a good look, I think, especially for guys who, whether they've had problems or injuries, the ability to get a second chance look. The issue is, and what I really feel is why it sort of leads to sloppier play, is the quarterback position has really struggled in the UFL, in both
mhm.
the XFL and USFL. Most of the guys are not just like, they're not even second stringers. I'd argue that they're sort of practice squad guys, and it really shows. I've yet to see a guy come out and just sling it to where I'm like, ooh, like I think this dude's going to get a few looks, for the NFL. You haven't seen anybody like that until the position of quarterback play improves in that league. It's just going to be hard to attract guys.
For sure. And I think, we've only seen AJ McCarron got offered, this past year. He was playing for, the St. Louis team. And then also our biggest success story out of that has been PJ Walker, who's still in the league.
Yeah, I mean, we will see with that, but we do appreciate you guys tuning in for the episode. As always, go follow us on Instagram, TikTok, our podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We do appreciate you guys tuning in. Looking forward to the Super Bowl. I wish Pops was here to enjoy it in person. Here in the studio would be even better. But I think both of us are just going to be sitting at the house trying to give the kids the Heisman while we're trying to watch the game. But outside of that, Pops, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
Negative.
Awesome. Well, time to pull chalks, guys. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll see you post the Super Bowl with our breakdown.